4:59 p.m. and I'm just now getting to work on the Evo. And the goal for the day is to get the Evo running. And as you can see, we have a long ways to go. Yesterday, I dropped in the motor and transmission with the new clutch, got everything cleaned up. We still need to do stuff like all the wiring, plumbing for fuel, coolant, the whole entire turbo setup, all the fluids. We got a long ways to go. And I'm not trying to stay here all night, but if I have to, I guess I will. We're gonna pick back up where we left off yesterday, and that is this engine wiring harness. So all that up here is pretty good. But right in this area here, it starts to get pretty questionable. I'm not really sure what's going on here. A lot of exposed wiring, spliced in connector for the ignition coils, so on and so forth. I do also want to tuck the harness underneath the intake manifold as much as possible. I've done it on every 4G build in the past. In factory, it runs over the manifold like so. And if you can tuck it underneath the intake manifold and then just extend all 8 wires for the 4 injectors and pass the connectors up through the holes in between the runners, it cleans it up so much. So I want to do that as well. Let's get cracking on the harness. Now, admittedly, I used to use these same connectors, but here's why I don't anymore. Oh man. All of them just fell apart. I used to promote using these connectors too, because they are easy to use. They're the heat shrink, heat solder, all in one type of connector. Man, that is a perfect way to yeet your motor on your vehicle. Nowadays, this is what I like to use to connect wiring. A crimp, a nice solid crimp, test it, pull on it, make sure it ain't gonna pop off, heat shrink it, good to go. So this is for one of the injectors. I'm gonna extend all of the injector wiring about yay long, 4 inches. And this is the last thing we need to do on the wiring harness. And then we connect the wiring harness to all of its sensors. In yesterday's video, I was saying I like to do all the wiring before the subframe and T-case goes in. Here's why. Look at all the space we have to get everything sorted out. So that's how it looks underneath with the entire harness routed underneath the manifold. And more importantly, here's how it looks up top. All there is the 4 injector connectors, and that is it. Finally, wiring is all finished up. I did have to go ahead and extend the harness for the map sensor as well. But it's all done. Got the coil pack on. This is the JDC, I guess they'd call it the show kit. So there's no wiring that runs up top for the coils either. Super nice, super clean. Of course, I do need to pop that valve cover off and get it powder coated still, but that's for a different day. We are gonna move on to the turbo kit. All these studs get replaced. They're all crusty, and I don't want them seizing up again like they did when we pulled the car apart. So we're gonna install some JDC titanium hardware. Now there are 2 ways to get studs out. First off is the double nut method. Second off is vice grips. I'm gonna vice grip them because they're going in the garbage. If you wanna save them, use the double nut method. Oh boy, I would not wish this on my worst enemy. Sorry, it's so bright. Anyways, we ended up with 2 broken off studs, and I finally got one of them broken loose. As you can see, I had to vice grip on a pair of vice grips as tight as possible and weld the vice grips on. I was trying to weld nuts on and they kept breaking off the stud even further and further. As you can see, that guy right there is gonna be not fun to get out, but that one is loose. So we got one left. This is ridiculous. Are you guys seeing this? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Oh man. Very last ditch effort to get the stud out, and she's out. Oh, wow. This was definitely not what I had intended. So the stud was completely flush with the head. So I welded on a washer to the stud and then made a little more weld off of that for another stud, welded a nut onto that, nut broke off. And then I grabbed the washer with vice grips, and lo and behold, man, she is finally out. I don't think this thing's gonna run tonight. That stud ordeal took 2 hours. As you can see by all the random broken welded nuts all over the place, we've been working on it for quite a while. Hey, there's another one. They are all out. I'm gonna go home and take a nap, come back in a couple hours, and get our turbo kit on. A few hours later, I'm good to go. Let's go ahead and get these JDC titanium studs installed. Now this is important. Some of those holes go into oil galleys. Part of the reason I didn't want to drill and tap, because metal shavings would get into our motor. You must apply RTV on some of the studs. I just apply it to all the studs to make sure we don't have any oil leaks. All new titanium JDC studs installed on the turbo as well. So we're gonna set this in the general location of where it's gonna sit, and then go ahead and install our manifold and bolt the two together. The turbo and manifold are installed. Up next, we need to install the transfer case and the subframe. So let's go ahead and get started with the T-case. We're gonna fill the gear oil while the T-case is out of the car through the output right here. And then as we're lifting that up into the car, we will connect the output to the drive shaft and bolt it up to the transmission. Oh, that's heavy. Got it. Now before this goes in, it needs some serious cleaning. Both lower ball joint boots are torn. Unfortunately, the new ones won't be in for a few days, so we will have to take care of that later on. But for now, let's get it cleaned and installed. We are getting awfully close to the first start. Here's what we have left: axles, intake pipe, and intercooler piping. And of course, all of the fluids and our grill will be ready for the first start. All of the intercooler piping is getting all new ETS couplers with V-band clamps. Some pretty janky clamps going on here. And I don't have the material here to fix this right now. I have no idea what's going on right there, man. They were struggling welding on the IAT bung. So we need to fix that. I just need to cut this pipe off and kind of remake that section, but that'll be for a different day. Alrighty guys, last thing we need is our fluids. So here we have our engine oil, Pen Grade 2050, Redline Cocktail for the transmission, transfer case is already full, Valvoline ATF for the power steering. This thing is ready to be fired up. It's not going to be drivable today. I still need to bleed the clutch, bleed the brakes, waiting on my clutch line to come in that goes from the master to the slave, things of that nature. But hey, let's go ahead and see if it'll fire. This is exciting. This is easy and fun. There's no new motor stuff to worry about. She should technically fire right up. Alright guys, first start is out of the way. Let's go ahead and install the radiator, get some coolant in her. I only ran it for 10-15 seconds just to make sure everything was good and we didn't have to pull the radiator back out, which I would have had to because I had a loose bolt on the downpipe. So I'm glad I didn't have the radiator in. So install that, install the intake, get some coolant in the motor and let it run for a little bit longer. Is alive, running better than ever. Just like that, my friends, the Evo is almost back on the road and better than ever. I'm super excited to get this thing on the dyno and see what this Busher built 2-liter paired with the FP Black is going to do. I'm assuming close to 600 on ethanol. Honestly, it's a very similar setup to what we have on this car. Just a bigger fuel system. So this is an AGT turbo with a 2.3 liter, and this car made 550 on no boost whatsoever. This thing should easily be able to crack that 600 wheel mark with the setup that's in it. That's gonna be a wrap for the day, my friends. I hope you guys enjoyed. The bay is still not complete. We have a few things to change up, primarily powder coat that a different color. I didn't install the carbon radiator shroud because there is a little bit of peeling clear, so I want to sand this thing down and re-clear coat it, make it perfect looking. At the same time, I'll do that as well, and then we're waiting on the new OEM cover for this.